My name is Jonathan Mercer. I am 42 years old, and for the last decade, I have lived farther north than most people would ever dare to go. My cabin stands on the edge of a black spruce forest in northern Alberta, more than 70 kilometers from the nearest settlement, and twice that from the nearest paved road. I came here in search of solitude, silence, and distance from the world I could no longer tolerate. What I found instead was something that silence does not soften, that distance does not protect against, and that solitude only sharpens. I did not move here in ignorance. I knew of the dangers, the bears that drift like shadows at dawn, the wolves that pad over snow with patience, the moose that can snap a man in half if he stumbles too close in the wrong season. I prepared for those. I studied tracking, learned the language of scat and claw marks, trained my body to move with care. I chopped wood through summers, hunted through autumns, trapped through winters. I thought I had made a truce with the land, but the land is not what haunts me. The animals are not what I fear. It began slowly. At first, there were nights when the forest went too quiet. Even in the coldest months, you hear things: the crack of trees splitting, the scrape of hairs across the crust of snow, the whistle of wind pressing itself between the pines. One January night, I heard none of it. The fire in my cabin snapped and hissed, but beyond the walls nothing moved. I stepped outside, lantern in hand, and the silence pressed against me like a weight. My boots made no sound on the snow. My breath plumed, but I could not hear it. I clapped my hands, and the sound was swallowed before it could echo. I stood there until the lantern shook in my grip. I tried to shout, just my own name, Jonathan! And though my mouth opened, I heard only the rattle of air in my throat, nothing that carried. The forest absorbed me. Then, just as sudden, sound returned. A crow's call, harsh and ragged, followed by the groan of trees bowing against the wind. I rushed back inside and barred the door, as though from a storm. The silence came again the next week, then again the week after that. It did not matter if the moon was full or hidden, if snow fell or the stars blazed overhead. It came when it pleased, and each time it lasted longer. By March, other things began to happen. One morning I found tracks in the snow circling the cabin. At first, I thought them wolf. But wolves do not walk in perfect circles, paw after paw placed evenly apart as if traced with a compass. Wolves do not stop at the door and leave the faint imprint of something pressed against the wood. I knelt and saw, to my disbelief, what looked like 5 digits. Too long for a hand, too narrow for a paw. They stretched from the edge of the track to the place where it had leaned against my cabin, as though something had crouched and pressed its strange fingers to the door in the night. I did not sleep the next night. I kept the lantern burning, rifle across my knees, ears straining for every groan of the timbers. At some hour past midnight, I heard it, the crunch of snow outside, slow, deliberate. The cabin walls are thin enough that every step reverberates through them. I waited for the sound to pass. It did not. It stopped just outside the door. I lifted the rifle and aimed at the wood, finger trembling on the trigger. Then, silence. The kind of silence that steals the air, the kind that feels alive. I do not remember falling asleep. I only remember waking to a pale light and finding the door unmarked. No tracks, no claw, no hand. Only unbroken snow, smooth as paper. You might ask why I stayed. Why I did not pack what I could and make the trek south. The truth is simple: the wilderness does not release you so easily. I built this cabin with my own hands, cut the trees that hold it upright, laid the stones that guard the hearth. To abandon it would feel like admitting that something else rules me, something I cannot name. Stubbornness is a dangerous trait, but it has kept me alive before. Still, there are things that stubbornness cannot explain. One evening, late spring, The thaw had just begun, and the river that curls near my cabin had broken open in jagged seams of ice. I sat by the shore, lines cast for trout, when I heard someone calling my name. Not a shout, not an echo, just a clear voice, close, as though someone stood behind me. Jonathan. I spun, heart hammering, but the bank was empty. The trees whispered in the breeze, water gurgled between ice floes, yet no one stood there. I told myself it had been a trick, the sound of water striking hollow ice. But the voice had been shaped. It had spoken with intent. Later that night, the same voice whispered again, just outside my window. I have tried to write these things down as factually as I can, though even as I place the words on paper, they feel unreal. But I assure you, they happened. They happened to me, and each one has pulled me further from whatever steady ground I once thought I had. What unsettles me most is that none of it feels random. The silence, the tracks, the voice, each seems to be drawing closer, circling me, pressing in as though to study what I am, or to remind me that I am the trespasser here. I came to these woods to escape people. Now something else has found me, something that does not belong to the animals or the seasons, and it has not stopped. The first time I truly feared for my life came at the height of summer. The forest was swollen with heat, every pine breathing sap, every stream running thin and sluggish. I had taken to sleeping with the windows open, trying to let even the faintest breeze roll through the cabin. One night, as I lay on my cot, I felt something brush my cheek. Not an insect, not the restless twitch of dream. It was the unmistakable touch of fingers, cool against my skin. I sat up with a shout, striking the lantern alight. The cabin was empty. The windows gaped wide, the screen intact. Nothing stirred. I told myself it had been a dream. But on my cheek, a faint smear remained, darker than dirt, more like ash, trailing from the corner of my mouth to my jawline. I washed it off until my skin burned, but I could still feel it there, a residue not of the body but of the mind. After that, I began to sense it watching more openly. When I hauled buckets from the river, I would glance up to see a shape at the far tree line, too dark to be shadow, too tall to be a man. When I split logs, I would feel its gaze pressing the back of my neck. I tried to catch it in glass, holding up my binoculars, turning my scope toward the shimmer of branches, but it vanished every time. It was not only me who sensed it. My dog, an old shepherd named Alder, had been my only companion since I moved north. Loyal, sharp, never one to spook without reason. One evening, he stiffened by the doorway, hackles raised, lips peeled back from his teeth. He growled low, steady, a sound I had never heard from him. I followed his gaze and saw, beyond the edge of the clearing, something standing perfectly still. It was dusk, that bruised hour when the light is neither day nor night. At first I thought it a man, broad-shouldered, with limbs longer than natural. It did not move, did not blink. Its skin, if it had skin, seemed the color of wet stone. Alder barked, lunged forward, and in that instant, the thing dissolved. It did not step back, did not turn. It collapsed inward, folding into the trees as if it had been part of them all along. I tried to calm Alder, though my own hands shook. He would not settle, pacing all night, ears cocked, throat rumbling at the walls. By dawn, he had worn a track into the floorboards. Days passed. The heat thickened. Alder would not go beyond the cabin's edge, and I had to drag water myself, my eyes darting with every rustle in the brush. Then, one morning, I found the dog gone. The door was closed, the windows latched, yet Alder was nowhere. I searched the clearing, the river, the edge of the forest, calling his name until my voice cracked. Nothing answered. No prints, no trail, no blood. Only silence so deep it burned my ears. That night I left the lantern burning in the window, in case he found his way back. Instead, I heard his bark, faint, drifting through the trees. Relief surged through me. But when I ran to the door and flung it open, the sound did not come closer. It circled instead, moving with deliberate steps, first to the north, then to the west, then behind me, each time the bark repeating at the same distance, the same pitch. I knew then that it was not Alder. Something had learned his voice. I slammed the door, bolted it, pressed my hands to my ears, but I could still hear it muffled, as though the sound carried through my own bones. "Alder," it called, though the tone slipped, distorted. Not quite a bark, not quite a human word. I lay on the floor until morning, unable to move. For a week after, I lived as though hunted. I set traps. I carved sharpened stakes and placed them around the cabin. I built a fire that I never let die. I barely slept. And each night, when exhaustion finally took me, I woke to some new sign. Once a smear of wet handprints across the wall, as if pressed from within. Once the door unlatched, though I had sealed it with iron nails. Once the smell of Alder's fur, wet and musky, thick in my bed, as if he had lain beside me all night. I thought of leaving then. I thought of walking south, following the river until I reached a road, abandoning all I had built. But the land held me, or perhaps the thing did. Some force pressed down, whispering that if I left, it would follow, and that the wilderness would not let me go until I saw it for what it truly was. It was late August when I finally saw its face. The moon hung low, full and swollen, painting the forest in silver. I had stepped outside with my rifle, more ritual now than protection, scanning the clearing before bed. At the edge of the trees, where the darkness knit itself into columns, it waited. The body was shaped like a man, but taller, leaner, joints bent wrong. Its skin, or what I took for skin, seemed carved of bark, ridged and rough, though when it shifted, it shimmered like stone under water. But the face was Alder's. My dog's eyes, my dog's muzzle, stretched grotesque over a human frame. Its mouth opened, and in my dog's voice it said, "Jonathan." I raised the rifle and fired. The sound tore through the night, echoing back a dozen times, rattling in my skull. The figure collapsed, not in death but in dissolution, breaking apart into fragments of shadow that slid between the trees. When the echoes died, the forest was empty. I did not find a body. I did not find blood. Only the smell of alder, sharp and pungent, clinging to my hands. That was when I stopped pretending this was something I could fight. Bullets mean nothing. Fire means nothing. It wears what it wants. It speaks how it pleases, and yet, it has not killed me. It could have, 100 times over. Instead, it circles, watching, pressing, as though waiting for something. The wilderness I once thought untamed has turned into a stage, and I the actor trapped on it. Every night, the performance repeats silence, imitation, apparition. But I know the climax has not yet come. Something deeper waits, patient as the forest itself. I stopped counting the days after that night. Time does not move the same when you are waiting for something to show itself. The sun rises, the sun falls, but the rhythm of the forest becomes erratic. Some mornings the birds sing as if nothing is wrong, their calls loud enough to sting. Other mornings, nothing stirs at all, and I wake with the weight of silence already pressing my chest before I even leave the bed. I tried to track it. Foolish, maybe, but I needed to know if I could follow the thing back to whatever hole it crawled from. I studied the ground at the edge of the clearing, looked for bent grass, snapped twigs, the faintest impressions in the soil. More than once, I found them not paw prints, not human, not bare. Long, narrow shapes, toes that stretched too far forward, a stride too even, too deliberate. I followed them through the spruce, every step gnawing at me. The deeper I went, the stranger the woods grew. Trees bent together in impossible arches, bark split open as though gnawed by teeth taller than my head. I found stones stacked into towers, balanced with a precision no hand could manage. Once, I saw a tree trunk burned black from the inside out, the wood hollow yet the bark untouched, as if fire had crawled within it like a parasite. Each path I took seemed to circle me back toward the river, no matter which direction I chose. It was as if the forest itself refused to let me leave. At night, I dreamed things I could not remember upon waking, only scraps of sensation, running through snow without leaving tracks, crouching at the cabin door and pressing my hand against it, staring at my own reflection in the water and seeing it blink when I did not. Some mornings I woke with mud under my fingernails, my feet damp, as if I had walked outside without knowing. I began to fear not just what watched me, but what I was becoming under its gaze. Then came the night of the knocking. It started softly, 3 taps against the wall, evenly spaced. I thought at first it was a branch shifting in the wind, but the rhythm repeated, louder this time, moving across the wall toward the window. My skin prickled. I gripped the rifle and waited. Then the knock shifted to the door, slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Jonathan, it whispered. Not Alder's voice this time. Not my dog, my own. I froze. The sound was unmistakable, the cadence, the tone, the way my name seemed to catch at the end. It was me. Someone, or something, stood on the other side of the door and spoke with my exact voice. I pressed the barrel to the wood, shaking, and shouted, "Leave!" The echo of my own voice came back from outside, perfect in pitch, mocking in its steadiness. Then the handle rattled. The door strained against the bolt. I backed away, heart hammering, until the cot pressed against my knees. The door never broke, but the knocking continued for hours, fading only when the sky grew pale and the birds began their morning chatter. I did not sleep after that. I could not. I began to fear the boundaries between myself and whatever it was. If it could wear Alder's face, if it could use my voice, what else could it take? The following evening, I made a decision. I packed a small kit, knife, flint, canteen, and set out to follow the river south. I told myself I would leave the cabin behind, no matter what it cost. The path was rough, brush snagging my clothes, mosquitoes humming in clouds, but the river gave me a line to follow. I walked until the sky bruised with twilight. Then, ahead of me, I saw a glow. At first I thought it a campfire. Relief surged through me, people. Perhaps hunters, trappers, anyone I could beg help from. I hurried forward, heart lifting. But as I drew close, the glow shifted. It was not fire, it was lantern light, my lantern. There, on the bank, stood my cabin. Perfectly whole. The same roof, the same door. Smoke curling from the chimney. But I had walked south all day. I had not turned back. And still, here it was, waiting for me. I staggered closer, too stunned to resist. Through the window I saw movement, a figure inside, seated at my table. My breath caught in my throat. It was me. Myself, sat in the chair, head bowed, hands clasped, as though in prayer. I stumbled back, crashing into the brush. The figure raised its head, and though the distance should have hidden his face, I saw his eyes. They were mine, but darker, as if hollowed. He smiled, my smile, and blew out the lantern. The cabin and all its light dissolved into the trees. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing at the base of a pine. I do not remember crawling back to the true cabin, but I woke there at dawn, mud streaked on my arms, pine needles tangled in my hair. I did not leave again. The wilderness had made it clear I could not. Since that night, the doubling has worsened. I catch glimpses of myself in the woods, standing between the trees watching. Sometimes I hear my own footsteps behind me, perfectly in sync until I stop, and then one more follows. I no longer trust mirrors, for I have seen the reflection grin before I did. What does it want? Why does it not finish what it begins? I do not know, but each encounter frays me thinner. Each day I wake with less certainty of where I end and it begins. And the silence, it returns more often now, lasting longer, pressing against my skull until I feel I might burst. In those stretches, I cannot hear the river, cannot hear my breath, cannot even hear the beat of my heart. It is as if I have ceased to exist, save for the weight of its eyes in the dark. I do not know how much longer I can endure this. The silence has grown into something I dread more than death. When it falls now, it does not simply strip the world of sound. It reaches inside me and cuts away thought itself, leaving me suspended, empty, aware only of the pressure of being watched. Sometimes it lasts for minutes, sometimes for hours. The last time it stretched through an entire night, and I do not remember a single dream, a single shift of my own body. Nothing at all until the sun touched the cabin wall. The forest has begun to change around me in ways that make no sense. Trails I walked 100 times now end in walls of stone where no cliffs should be. The river bends back upon itself, creating impossible loops, as though geography has surrendered to something else's design. I mark trees with my axe, only to find the marks vanish when I circle back. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Now I am convinced it is not my mind that fails but the land itself, reshaping to keep me contained. I began keeping notes in a leather journal, dates, times, what I see, what I hear. But the entries alter themselves. Whole passages change while I sleep. I wake to find words I never wrote. He is learning. He is almost ready. The woods will take him back. The handwriting is mine, but I swear upon my life, I did not write those lines. One evening, I found pages torn out, scattered across the floor as though flung by wind. Each page bore only one word, written over and over until the paper tore stay. I burned them in the hearth, but the smoke that rose was not wood smoke. It was sweet, almost floral, and when it drifted through the cabin, I felt light, headed, as if something had filled my lungs with its own breath. I thought perhaps the wilderness wanted to drive me mad, to unmake me piece by piece. But madness implies chaos. What I feel is not chaos. It is direction. Every event, every silence, every apparition points towards something deliberate. And then came the night I saw the procession. I had been unable to sleep, pacing the cabin until the lantern guttered. Near midnight, I stepped to the window. At first, I thought I saw fireflies weaving through the trees, but they moved in formation, dozens of pale orbs floating in a line. As they drew closer, I realized they were not lights at all, but faces. Faces pale as bone, eyeless, drifting above the ground. Their mouths hung open, but no sound passed their lips. They floated past the clearing in silence, one after another, vanishing into the trees beyond. At the center of the line, taller than the rest, walked the figure. The same thing that had worn Alder's face, that had spoken in my voice, that had smiled from my cabin window. Its head turned toward me as it passed. The faces followed, every empty socket fixed upon my window. I could not move. I could not breathe. Only when the last of them vanished did the air return to my lungs. The next morning, I found prints circling the cabin again. This time they were mine. Bare feet, heel to toe, etched deep in the soil, pacing endlessly until they overlapped in a groove. My own steps, walking in circles while I slept. I barricaded the door, nailed the windows shut, but still the signs grew worse. Some nights I wake with dirt between my toes. Other nights, the cot is empty when I rise, as though I had never lain there at all. I fear now that I am being hollowed, that whatever watches does not intend to kill me but to inhabit me, to wear me as it wore my dog, as it wore my reflection. My body, my voice, my life, turned into its own. The clearest proof came 3 days ago. I woke to find my journal open on the table. The entry read, "You are not Jonathan Mercer." Not anymore. My hand had written it. My name signed below. I tore the page out, fed it to the fire, swore never to look at the journal again. But when I glanced at the mirror above the basin, the reflection that looked back did not mimic me. Its lips moved before mine, forming words I could not hear. Then it grinned, too wide, too eager, and I smashed the glass with my fist. Blood ran down my knuckles, bright against the wood, and in that moment the silence fell again. The world dimmed, soundless, and behind me I felt breath, slow and steady. I turned, but nothing stood there. Only the weight of something filling the room. When the silence broke, the blood was gone. My hand was clean. The shards of glass lay on the floor, but my reflection no longer appeared in them. I am writing this now by lantern light, though the flame trembles as if blown by unseen breath. I no longer know how much of me is left. Each word I put to paper feels less like mine and more like dictation. Still, I write, because perhaps if I can keep the story tethered to the page, I can anchor myself a little longer. But I feel it watching me now. I feel it leaning closer, and I am no longer certain I am alone in this cabin. I have always believed that when the mind breaks, it does so quietly. That madness creeps in subtle, until one morning you wake and realize you no longer trust the shape of the world. But what has come upon me here is not quiet. It is violent, insistent, pressing against me with such force that I feel my thoughts fracture like ice beneath a heavy boot. 3 nights ago, I woke outside. Not in my cot, not within the walls of the cabin I built, but lying in the clearing with the stars gaping down at me. My clothes were damp with dew, my feet bare, and my hands buried deep in the soil, as though I had clawed at the earth in my sleep. Around me, arranged in a perfect circle, were stones. Each stone was carved with lines I did not understand. Spirals, slashes, symbols that burned my eyes if I stared too long. I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering, and fled inside, leaving the circle behind. When morning came, I forced myself back out, needing to see, to know I had not dreamed it. The clearing was bare. No stones, no marks, no circle. Only smooth earth and the faint trail of my own prints leading back to the cabin. That day, I swore I would not sleep again. I brewed coffee until my hands shook, sat upright at the table with the rifle across my knees. But exhaustion is not a thing a man can fight for long. Sometime near dawn, my eyes betrayed me, and I woke once more to find myself outside. This time I was kneeling, not in the clearing, but at the riverbank. My reflection stared back from the water, darker than it should have been, its grin already formed before mine. My hands cupped water as though offering it to the sky. I staggered back, choking on air, and only then realized my lips were moving. I was whispering words I did not know, words that did not belong to me. The sound of them clung to my ears long after I stopped. Since then, I have begun to notice changes in my own body. My nails grow too quickly, blackened at the edges as though burned. My eyes catch the lantern light in ways they should not, and when I speak aloud, sometimes the echo comes before the word leaves my lips. The silence that has stalked me for months has turned into something worse. It is not absence anymore. It is full, a density, a presence that drapes itself over me. When it falls, I no longer struggle against it. I find myself sinking into it, comforted almost, as though returning to something I once knew. 2 nights ago, I dreamed of the procession again. The pale faces floated past, their mouths open in voiceless chant. At their center, the figure turned toward me, but this time it did not wear Alder's face, nor my own. It wore both, flickering between them dog and man, voice and silence, shifting as though trying on different masks until it settled on something new. Me, but not as I am now. Me as I will become. I woke with tears streaking my face, though I could not say why. The grief was sharp, but so was the relief, as though some buried part of me longed for what it showed. I am writing this by lamplight again, but the shadows no longer behave. They lean when they should not, stretch against the corners of the cabin as though pulled by invisible strings. When I move, they hesitate, a beat too long before following. And tonight, just before I set pen to paper, I heard voices outside. Not one, not the mimicry of Alder, nor the echo of my own. Many low murmuring threading through the trees in cadence. They did not call my name. They did not beg or threaten. They chanted. The rhythm matched the words I had whispered at the river. I opened the door, against every instinct, and stepped into the clearing. The moon was gone, the stars smothered, yet the trees glowed faintly, lit from within by some hidden pulse. At the far edge of the clearing, shapes gathered, not solid, not smoke, not shadow, something between all three. Faces floated pale within them, mouths open in that soundless chant. At their center, the figure waited. Taller than the rest, patient, certain. It did not move toward me, did not lunge or beckon. It only stood, as if to say, "It is time." I shut the door, bolted it, and pressed my back against the wood. The voices have not stopped since. They circle the cabin, rise and fall like the tide. I feel the boards beneath my feet thrum with their rhythm, as though the forest itself hums along. I am afraid, yes, but beneath the fear there is something else I do not want to admit. A pull, a hunger, a sense that if I opened the door and walked into that gathering, I would understand at last what has haunted me, that I would no longer be prey, no longer alone. And I do not know how much longer I can resist. I have not slept in 2 nights, yet I feel no fatigue. The voices do not stop. They swell and fade, sometimes drifting far into the forest, sometimes pressing right up against the walls, as though they breathe through the cracks in the wood. The rhythm has become part of me. My heart now beats in time with it, steady as a drum, unbroken even when I hold my breath. The journal lies open before me, though my hand moves without my command. The words form themselves, my pen scratching across the page in a script I can barely follow. He is ready. The woods remember. The body is only a vessel. I try to stop, to drop the pen, but my fingers clutch it like a claw. Only when the sentence ends do I regain control, trembling as I stare at what I have written. Last night, the silence fell again, heavier than ever. Not only sound vanished, light dimmed, color drained, air thickened until it felt like I was breathing through water. In that suffocating stillness, I felt it enter, not through the door, not through the window, through me. My lungs filled with something that was not air. My thoughts split like timber under an axe. For a moment, I saw 2 versions of the cabin, one dark and crumbling, filled with shapes that crouched and swayed, the other my own, small and bare. Then both merged, and I was left kneeling on the floor, mouth open, breathless. When the silence broke, I laughed. I did not mean to. The sound burst from me, harsh and unfamiliar, a voice stretched too thin. It echoed even after I stopped. This morning, I found my reflection again, on the surface of the river. It smiled before I approached, lips already curled, and then it spoke, not aloud, but through me. Its mouth moved, and the words slipped past my own lips, though I did not will them. Tonight, I staggered back, nearly falling into the water. The reflection lingered, grinning, until the current warped it into nothing. Now the sun is down again, and I sit at the table with the lantern guttering low. The chanting outside has grown louder, the faces pressing closer. I see them through the gaps in the shutters, pale and endless, circling in their procession. At their center, it waits, the tall figure. My face stretched over its bones, my eyes hollowed. The door shudders, though no hand touches it. The walls bend inward as if the forest itself leans closer. I can hear my name, whispered not once but 1,000 times, layered until it becomes a single unbroken note. I could resist, perhaps, fire the rifle until the barrel glows, scream until my throat tears, run south until my legs break beneath me. But what would it matter? The land itself turns against me. The river bends back upon itself. The trails twist like knots. There is no leaving. There has never been leaving. I understand that now. The wilderness is not empty. It never was. It is alive in a way no map, no compass, no human mind can hold. And I have been chosen, not to escape it, not to fight it, but to join it. The lantern sputters. The chanting grows. The silence falls again, heavier than ever, and I feel it fill my chest. I drop the pen, though even now words etch themselves on the page without me. Welcome home. I rise, though I do not command my legs. I walk to the door, though my hands shake at the bolt. The wood is cold, wet with dew that should not be there. The voices stop as my fingers touch the latch. For the first time in months, the forest waits in silence. Not heavy, not oppressive, but expectant. I open the door. What stands outside is me, and not me. Its grin stretches wide, welcoming. The procession sways, endless faces turning toward me. My voice, their voices, the wilderness itself, all speak at once. Jonathan. I step forward, and the forest closes behind me.